Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community. We are running C-Class cars that were fitted with some drag tyres. My Alfa Romeo got off to an absolutely flying start at the first race at the Road Atlanta short circuit. I made up a number of positions off the line, then went through the middle of everything up the hill. This Alfa accelerated like crazy. It was stupidly fast. I went from the back of a 16 car field to fourth by the sort of third corner. There were a few spins and a few collisions on the opening lap. Yeah, this Alfa sort of shot off the line like a crazy little rocket. As I said, there were a few bumps here and there. On the most part, though, cars made it through relatively well. Now, having drag tyres on the cars does not make them undrivable. It tends to add a fair bit of understeer to the vehicles, but they aren't completely undrivable, and they're still perfectly okay to race with. Things were all sort of 2x2s into the chicane as a RX-7 gets past an E-Type, and MR2 ends out very wide, and that's a bit of the understeer coming in there. The Mazda we're following is trying to get up the inside. This final corner is a tough place to overtake at the best of times. Never mind when you've got slightly understeery cars. The E-Type gets a bit wide, the Camino up in front gets very wide. It's four cars wide on the start-finish straight. Amazingly, everybody gets through okay, with only a couple of scrapes on the wall. The Camaro's around the outside of everything and manages to get the position. I was up into third with a big slide, that wasn't helping matters, from my Alfa, trying to find a way past a Beetle. And I was struggling a little bit to get past this Beetle. It took me a couple of laps. The thing with the Alfa is, yes, it is incredibly fast, accelerating very fast in a straight line, but it doesn't really have that good a cornering grip. It can't carry that much corner speed. All its lap time is made up on the acceleration and the straight line. It's pretty good under brakes as well. But getting past the Beetle was proving to be quite tricky. In the end, the Beetle ran just a little bit wide. I got a little bit of a bump through that final corner, and I have the acceleration to get up the inside. The Mazda comes with me. We make it 3 wide into the turn 1. Beetle gets a weird on the AstroTurf, does very well to save it. Seen many a car go off at that corner from doing a similar thing. So yeah, well done for keeping the Beetle on the track. We both managed to get past. There was a fair bit of overtaking going on in the opening lap. This Toyota MR2 catching up to the back of a Kia Ceed. I think the Kia was the only car that ran front-wheel drive in the entire evening. I'm not sure if anything else did. I think it probably was, though. The MR2 up the inside has a very scary moment on the brakes. That was a very big lock up and twitch and slide, and again running a little bit wide. The Kia has a very good run off that particular corner, but can't quite do anything about it. And as I said, this final corner is a scary place to overtake at the best of times, and the Kia ends up a little bit wide with a bump against the wall. Up into second, I was trying my best to catch up to the leader. However, the RX-7 wasn't going anywhere, and you will see through the corners the Mazda was incredibly quick compared to me. The Mazda could make up so much time through the corners, and you would think the pass was done there with me running a little bit wide. And then we have the speed of the Alfa. It's just such a stupidly fast car in a straight line, and then I'm clear again. I can keep my car on the inside, and the Mazda doesn't quite have enough grip to go all the way around the outside. And again, on the exit, Mazda gets much better drive, gets to the inside, then there's the acceleration of the Alfa, and the Mazda's just too far back to try anything. It probably has the grip, certainly, to make it too wide through this final corner, but it's just too far back because of the acceleration of the Alfa. The Mazda was also pretty damn good on the brakes, so yeah, I was always a little bit cautious. I got things wrong into turn 1, ended up about a bit wide, but again, it didn't really matter because the acceleration was so fantastic in the Alfa that I could just fend off. It must have been incredibly annoying for the Mazda sitting behind me because there was just nothing that he could do to get past. Such was the speed of the car, again coming up to this long sweeping corner. The Alfa wasn't too bad through the sort of the slower corners. The minute we started going to some of the sweeping corners, it didn't really like them. That's where I lost most of my time. You can see the Mazda again has got past me at halfway around the corner, but then can't hold it on the exit because of the acceleration, and I could keep doing this all day. We were gradually catching the leader as well, which is quite impressive considering how much we were fighting. We were still going pretty damn quickly around the track and gradually catching the leader. Again, just a little bit of a slide from the Alfa on the exit. It wasn't too bad a car. It was a little bit oversteery perhaps, and again, the size of the gap that I've got before this final corner. Yeah, acceleration was pretty mental on my Alpha. As we came past the halfway distance, tyres started to wear and cars started to become harder and harder to drive, and just sort of little things would be going on. This Chevelle got a big slide coming down the hill, couldn't save it, found a tyre wall, and then did a spectacular roll across the track. Well done to the MR2 for avoiding that. The Alpha had a small bump on the wall, but stayed out of trouble. Yeah, that's not what you want to see. That's not what you want to see at all in front of you, as a big muscle car rolling across the track. Yeah, as the tyres start to wear, once you start getting past sort of 70-75% tyre wear, you really do start feeling it. And of course, once the tyres have got past that stage, they start wearing a lot faster. So yeah, you didn't want to leave it too long before you came in for a pit stop, because if your tyres are gone, you lose so much time. The leader was one of the first cars to blink and slightly miss the pit lane here. It is a difficult pit lane to get in if you're not used to trying to drive a car into it, because it's all completely unsighted down a hill. Yeah, decided to pit a little bit earlier than some other cars, and there's somebody else coming in the background as well, just to make sure that his tyres didn't go off. And you saw in the background the Mazda clonked a wall as tyres were beginning to die slowly. There were a few of us that were brave enough to try and complete this race without pitting. The Kia Ceed was one of them. Gained some good track position as all the cars came into the pits for their change of tyres. However, it just didn't have the speed to fight with that. It didn't have the tyres either to fight with the likes of the Mazda. Yeah, you can make up some good track position by doing that, but then you're going to have ruined tyres towards the end of the race if your car chews through them. Front-wheel drive cars are also incredibly difficult for this particular challenge, because everything is being done by the front wheels. It's the front wheels that take all of the punishment. So yeah, they would tend to wear their tyres quickly, and the Kia would struggle and drop back through the order as it just didn't have the tyres to compete with these other cars. As we have a little bit of lag. Lag wasn't too bad though. Lag wasn't too bad on this one. The Camaro here making up a couple of positions after the poor RX-7 got in a tangle with a back marker. Mazda was pretty damn close though through these corners. And I'm not sure about the engine smoke. I don't quite know if that's a little bit of a laggy replay. At the front, and my Alpha didn't require a pit stop. Not only was it incredible on the acceleration and speed front, it was very, very good on tyre wear. It was the best car here on the sort of the tyre conservation front. Last couple of laps, it just sort of ticked over. I think it was about 75-80% tyre wear on this final lap. It was rather strange. The final two laps were by far my fastest lap of the race, or laps of the race. I found a really nice balance as the tyres started to wear with the car. Don't ask how. It just worked, and the Alpha made it across the line without needing a pit stop. Yeah, pretty damn good car. I was pleased with it in this opening race. Another car that tried to brave it out without the pit stop was a Mazda RX-8 that lay in second place. He wasn't quite so lucky on the tyre wear front, as his tyres gave up on the final chicane, as we see a very big slide. Yeah, that's your rear tyres completely and utterly chewed through as we come over the crest of the hill. It's just another big kick of sideways. And once your tyres are gone like this, you have very little control around the final corner. That's a big slide from the RX-8. Unfortunately, he took a lap down Chevelle with him. Yeah, crosses the line backwards. Does get second place. Tyres completely and utterly gave up on the final couple of corners. Our next race, we went to the Bernese Alps circuit, one of the biggest tyre killers on Forza 5. Yeah, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one for cars. It was set to 10 laps, so if you wanted to finish without pitting, you needed to average less than 10% tyre wear a lap, and that is pretty damn tough. Even my Alpha seriously struggles to do that. It's not an easy task for any of these cars. And also, by the end of the race, if you do try without pitting, you're going to have utterly ruined tyres. So you're going to be incredibly slow towards the end. Unfortunately, all manner of lag would go on. As I said, it wasn't too bad the first and third race. This one here, there was a big lag shunt at the start. It was only a couple of cars that were actually involved in the lag shunt, but as the cars were sort of dispersed across the track, it took out a few other vehicles as well. So yeah, there was a little bit. I think it was 8 cars were broken on the opening lap. It was only a couple of cars actually lagged into each other. It was a bit of a mess. It was a bit of a mess on the opening lap here as an MR2 finds its way past a Honda Prelude. It's one of those things. That happens, and like we're still being a little bit unhappy as we came round on lap 2. Never quite sure where cars are. Mercedes up the inside. The Scirocco is getting all unhappy and then gets catapulted forwards. I mean, that's an impressive shot from the lag cannon there to fire the Volkswagen forwards. I'm not even. Sometimes you see sort of cars all crashing together. I'm not entirely sure how that one got fired so far forwards. As I said, there was a lot of us that were broken and had to make the long trek back to the pit lane. I did lead the train back to the pit, but my Alfa struggled here at the Alp circuit. I said at Road Atlanta it didn't really like the long sweeping corners. Well, this track is it's just entirely long sweeping corners, and my Alfa just did not have the grip. It couldn't carry the corner speed some of the other cars. I tried my best to fight off a Mustang, and I did have good straight line speed again with this car, as you would expect, but I couldn't carry the corner speed through these. I thought about having a dive up the inside, and there was plenty of space for me to have a dive, but there's just no corner speed from the Alfa Romeo. I had to kind of concede that one at the front, and there was a pretty damn close battle for second, third and fourth. The MR2 had vanished a little bit in first, and these guys were all pretty close. A Renault 5 that was in this group pitted a lap earlier. These guys then promptly dived into the pits. Yeah, it was all about you wanted to make sure you had tyres at the end. You didn't want to pit too early because you don't want to be running out of tyres towards the end of the race here. Otherwise, you are in real trouble. The Lancia and Mercedes were very, very quick through. Both of them were very close through the pits. Sorry, as they leave on the exit. The Renault 5 is right back with them, joining in, trying to go the long way around the pair of them at turn 1. I think the Renault 5 was a little bit more difficult to get through the corners. Quick car in a straight line, a little bit like my Alfa, but it was better through the corners than my blooming Alfa from the looks of things. But yeah, it was a little bit slower through the corners than these two cars. It was racing, but quicker on the straight. As they both came out of the pits, the Renault managed to split the two cars, but was struggling a little bit with turning. The Mercedes trying to get up the inside. The Renault running a little bit wide, a slight brush on the wall. Mercedes comes from a long way back on the inside. Renault stays around the outside. But the Mercedes gets a very, very good drive off that particular corner. There's some good acceleration in this car. The Renault couldn't quite keep his car there. You may also see a couple of ghost cars going on, which is something very weird that happened during this session. There's a ghost Scirocco stuck at the bottom of the hill. When people lagged out, the cars sort of stayed in the lobby this time and just became these ghost vehicles. One thing here, you definitely wanted to make sure you'd pitted by the time your tyres got to 100%. Because if they did get to 100% and you hadn't pitted, this is what happened. You kind of crawled around the track. If it was the front tyres, you had no steering, as this this Mustang shows. With the rear tyres, you just spun. Yeah, you didn't want to push it to that kind of level. And even those of us that had to pit on lap 1 from the lag crash, they were having to pit again. That's the sort of the tyre, and we're having to pit sort of around the halfway stage almost. I think it's sort of lap 6, lap 7. You were having to pit. That's the sort of tyre wear that you got going on. At the front though, it was the Toyota MR2 that was to take victory by a relatively sizable amount from the rest of the field. Yeah, it certainly helped with half the field getting knocked out on the first lap. Wasn't quite as quite as exciting a race as it perhaps could have been. And for me, well, I tried to do the entire race on one pit stop. I didn't want to have to come in again after pitting on lap 1, and I figured my Alfa was about the only car that stood a real chance of managing it, and it couldn't. Even the Alfa, with its mighty tyre conservation and incredibly lightweight, it couldn't do it. The tyres gave up on the fight. It was about the only option I had. My car was struggling around this track. I wasn't going particularly quick, so I figured, if I don't pit, maybe I'll be able to, or if I don't pit again, maybe I'll be able to make up a couple of positions. I couldn't. The rear tyres were shot to hell in the Alfa, and now my cornering was even worse as we go very sideways, and promptly managed to spin the car. Yeah, getting to 100% tyre wear is bad. Actually quite rare to have the rear tyres go on a car here rather than the front tyres. I'd lose another position as a Honda Prelude would get past. Our third and final race would go to the Catalonia National Circuit. This is another tyre killer of a track. I'm not entirely sure why this track is so bad, but it really does absolutely ruin tyres. Okay, maybe not quite as bad as the Alps circuit, but it's still a pretty nasty one to be dealing with. At the first corner, there was a bit of a bump further back, and I think there was a spinner as well through it. Quite a few cars made it through. Okay at the front. Amazingly, it was a Holden that was leading the way through these very fast corners. I mean, these are definitely tyre-killing corners. That one there is a very fast one. The rest of the track, though, perhaps not quite as quick. The Subaru Impreza does a very brave manoeuvre around the outside of the fast chicane. That is a tough place to get overtakes done around there. Certainly with cars that tend to be a bit more understeery and don't really have the cornering grip. Yeah, that's a tough place to get overtakes. My Alpha was again being incredibly fast in between each of the corners. It suited this track much better. I much preferred driving this car here. It was a much nicer car around this particular track. The Ferrari managed to keep it all the way around the outside on the Alpha, but I had so much acceleration in between the corners. I could get past the Ferrari. I then ended up on the outside of a muscle car going around the chicane. Got to be careful of the bumps on the inside. A few cars can have problems with those huge, great big sausage curbs onto the start-finish straight, and this is where the Alpha could really shine and show off its straight line speed over pretty much. I think it was probably the fastest car here in a straight line. It was phenomenally quick. This vehicle cruising up alongside a BMW, then hard on the brakes into turn one. Just outbraked myself a little bit. Ended up out a tiny bit wide. Tried to hold it around the outside of the BMW. Couldn't really make that one stick. The Ferrari is still there. Right behind, so I've got to be careful not to go too aggressive on the trying to get past. Again, the speed up the hill from the Alfa Romeo. Can't really do anything through here though. As I said, car doesn't really like the faster corners too much. I don't have that enough grip really to try and get an overtake through here. But you can see the Ferrari was closing on me on the exit there. I can just help drag the BMW up towards the next corner. BMW's not giving out without a fight though. Tries the outside. I can't quite hold it. The Ferrari is joining in trying to get past the BMW as well. Further up, and it was an RX-7 that was making a move on the Holden. And yes, now we begin to see some more ghost cars. I think about 4 ghost cars end up in this final race. I don't know why it's gone so glitchy this time around. Particularly, it's the game was being a little bit strange on this particular one. I've only ever seen it happen like a couple of times in the entirety I've played Forza 5, and it happened 4 times in this final race, and once at I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the Mazda trying to find a way past the Holden. The Holden was a decent car in a straight line, but just lacked the grip through the corners. The Mazda managing to get to the inside on the final turn. And just simply outdriving, just carrying more corner speed through the. I mean, I'm not surprised really. A Holden was struggling through the corners, particularly. I mean, it's a big, heavy car compared to the rest of us, and the Holden continued to struggle compared to the other vehicles. This time, a Hyundai Genesis tries to get up the inside at the chicane, can't quite get his car stopped. Holden fights back on the exit, tries to get to the inside and successfully gets the position back. Unfortunately, the big old Aussie car can't quite hold it through the corners, ends up out a bit sideways and a bit wide, and the Hyundai is through as the Holden ends up out across the grass. This final race was proving to be pretty damn exciting, I have to say. While the Hyundai and the Holden were fighting for position, the Ferrari was trying to make its way past a Honda Civic, while the BMW was still sitting in there in close proximity, just waiting for anything. The Ferrari's around the outside of the Civic. That's a tough place to get a pass done, but he manages to make it stick just about. He is on the inside for these final tricky corners. The BMW sees an opportunity, dives up the inside. Yet there's another lagged out car on that corner there. BMW's around the outside of the final 2 corners. That's another. You don't normally see that overtake go on. That's another damn impressive overtake from a BMW that time. Yeah, that's a tough one to get done around there. At the front, and it was a Subaru Impreza that was leading the way. Now this race was, I think it was a 12-lap race we had here, and this was another tough one for cars to make it the entire way on their tyres basically. I think at this point I was up into second and was gradually catching the leader. You may just about see my Alpha in the background. The Subaru dives in the pits at I think it's around sort of the lap 6, lap 7 stage of the race. There we go. There goes my Alpha. The Subaru has dived in the pits, and I had a tough decision with the Alpha. It was the choice of, do I try and make it to the end, which I think it might just about do, but for the final lap have very, very ruined tyres, or do I come in and play it safe? Most of the rest of the field didn't really have that choice. Very few cars had the same tyre life that the Alfa Romeo did. Most of the cars that you see here all had to pit at some point. The RX-7 had an early pit stop, had quite an early pit stop actually, compared to the rest of the field, and it worked out pretty well for him. He came out, or after the Ferrari pitted, shall we say, the RX-7 came out in front of the Ferrari and was now trying to manically fend off the probably the most expensive car in the field. The Ferrari seemed pretty quick, was trying his best to find a way past, but the Catalonia circuit is not the easiest one to overtake on, certainly not on the national layout. Ferrari does get a good move up the inside around the final corner. There was a little bit of paint swapping going on there, and then we have the drag race down towards turn 1. Certainly turn 1 is your best overtaking spot on this track. Big long braking zone into a fairly tight hairpin. The Ferrari on the inside, the Mazda would have to be very brave to try it around the outside. Fortunately for him, the Ferrari just outbrakes himself a little bit, runs wide. Mazda can get up the inside, but it's still side by side. These next few corners are pretty quick, and again, they're pretty tough places to overtake, but the Mazda manages to hold it all the way around the outside, and then up the hill you're on the inside for this next fast corner, and going wide around there is unlikely to work. In the end, the Ferrari just ran out of road. They both really ran out of grip and ended up out wide. At the front, we had a Lotus 11. This car had come into the pits on lap 1 after having a bump at the first corner. I'd completely forgotten about it in the race. I was worried about where I was going to come out in comparison to the Subaru. With about 3 laps remaining, I was on 70% tyre wear. I figured, let's play it safe and let's go into the pits and get some new tyres. I knew my car was fast, so I figured that was the safer option. I didn't really want to risk it. The Subaru had a little tangle with back markers over the final curves. I'm not even sure if he didn't have an argument with the big sausage curve. He ended up wide, and the Lotus 11 moved up into second place while I was in the pit lane. And as we come down the start-finish straight, I was frantically looking around trying to see where the Subaru was, and turned out I had a Lotus on the outside as we go through the first corner. As side by side, as I came out of the pit stop, what another BMW, that's the frozen ghost cars, yeah, don't ask. And yeah, now the Lotus amazingly leads the race. However, the Lotus is on old tyres. The Alfa has got some brand new ones and still incredibly quick. On the acceleration front, I try to go around the outside at the top of the hill. I don't know why, because it's unlikely to work. Getting through these next corners, I was trying to find a way past. Couldn't quite do anything. I just didn't quite have the grip. And behind this battle for first, a Hyundai that had also come in quite early, pitted on the same lap as the RX-7, had made his way up to 4th and was trying to find his way past the Subaru. Sure enough, the Hyundai here had some good straight line speed. It was almost as quick as my blooming Alfa in a straight line. Could simply outdrive the Subaru down this start-finish straight, get to the inside of turn 1, make things difficult for the Impreza. He was kind of having a look around the outside there and get the position. Subaru's trying to come back at him. Hyundai makes sure to give him space through these next couple of corners, but the Subaru just hasn't quite got that acceleration to get his car where he wants it. Hyundai's again out a little bit wide, is starting to struggle with his tyres. Again, probably suffering a little bit the same situation I have with the Alfa in general, which is, you know, good straight line speed, maybe not quite as much cornering, but for now the Hyundai held on to 3rd place. And the Lotus at the front, sort of on the first lap after I was out of the pits, the Lotus pulled a little bit of a margin back to the Alfa. The problem was the Lotus, as I said, came in on lap 1, and that is a long way to go on a set of tyres. So his tyres were starting to go off towards the end of the race, whereas I, with the Alfa, had the healthiest tyres of the field and didn't have to worry about any conserving of my tyres. So I was gradually starting to close on the Lotus through these corners. The Lotus just wasn't as quick through the corners, couldn't pull as bigger a margin through the corners as he could on the previous lap. My Alfa has a pretty big slide. I was certainly pushing the Alfa as we come on to the start-finish straight, and then we have the speed of the Italian car. It was just so unbelievably fast compared to everything. The Lotus, I think, was about the only car that was lighter than the Alfa, but it was still no match for the speed and the acceleration of my car. There's a little bit of a bump into turn 1 as I made sure I got my car stopped here, and I was promoted up into the lead as the Lotus's tyres started to gradually die. In 3rd place, the Hyundai was in a similar situation, having made up track position with the earlier pit stop. the tyres were struggling on the on the big Hyundai. It had an awful lot of laps to do compared to the cars around it. It meant it was just struggling more and more through the corners. It was quicker than the Subaru in a straight line, yes, but it was losing a lot of time through these corners. The Subaru gets to the inside through the fast chicane, and the Hyundai pretty much has to give up trying to go around the outside. When your tyres are sort of as shot as I imagine the Hyundais were, there is very little you can do. I mean, you see the Hyundai struggling now to get it stopped into the hairpin. It was a good effort from the Genesis, but yeah, in the end, it was just asking too much of the tyres up front. And while yes, the Lotus tyres were giving up, he was still fighting. My Alfa was still not the nicest car through the corners, even with brand new tyres. But it was, if I defended, it was quite difficult for the Lotus to do very much. Again, he's looking at around the outside, and that's a long way to go. It's a long way to go around the outside on a car with shot tyres. You can see here, the front tyres are just gone on the Lotus. The Lotus has just got absolutely no more steering, and the Alfa has now just vanished up the road. The Lotus's tyres are completely and utterly worn to hell and has no turning through these final corners. The Lotus is in fact a little bit of danger from the Subaru behind if his tyres really start to struggle. The Subaru bumps the Beetle out of the way, trying to get up to second place. In the end, the Lotus has just enough grip to get away with it. I take victory in the Alfa Romeo. Lotus takes second with the Subaru in third. Hyundai ends up in fourth with his rather ruined tyres. It was a fantastic race at the Catalonia circuit. I have to say, it was really very, very good fun. And I'm liking racing with the drag tyres. It makes things certainly interesting when it comes to sort of tyre management and pit stop strategy and stuff. It was very good fun, I have to say. I really did quite highly enjoy it. And the Alfa Romeo was amazing. It was a fantastic car. The only vehicle that had some like really good tyre conservation on that car. It could perhaps have made that final race. I don't know. It may have done it without pitting. I just didn't want to risk it. Anyway, that is it for this week's FailRace versus the community. The next one shall be held on Monday, the 23rd of February. We're going to be on Forza Horizon 2. We're going to be playing some playground games with A-class cars. So we're going to be doing a mix of Infected and King and some of that stuff. I quite enjoy the playground games. They're a good bit of fun. So yeah, we're going to mess around with some more of them. You do not need the Storm Island DLC. We're not going to be playing on Storm Island. We're going to be playing on the main game. As per normal, it will be starting at 7 PM GMT time, and if you want to sign up to take part in it, then you can go to our forums. There will be a link in the description. Find the FailRace versus the community section, and you can sign up in there. However, that's it from me, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.